This mission is called Fields of Fire. In this mission, the Syrians are launching a massive armored counterattack against the flank of the German main effort onto Aleppo. It stated in the briefing that they have up to battalion plus strength armor, including modernized main battle tanks. My force consists of a company minus of Panzer Grenadiers, a platoon of Panzer tanks, the company commander, and the forward observer section. Starting off here, I'm just taking an overview of the terrain. It's quite obvious that they are going to be attacking in a mechanized wave, and I come to this conclusion just by the general nature of the terrain. It's a big, wide open plain, and the best way to attack a position with inferior numbers but superior firepower is to rush them and engage them at close range. So that's what I suspect that the Syrians will do. They'll probably attack in a mechanized wave, a company at a time. It'll probably be preceded by a smoke screen or a preparatory bombardment onto my positions. The most important thing about this mission is going to be planning defenses and planning kill zones. I'm going to need several OPs that have good line of sight over the entire battlefield so I can call in artillery, because they gave me back my Panzer Haubitzes. And I'm also going to need those OPs to spot incoming formations of enemy and pass those contact reports to other units. Secondly, another important thing is the placement of my tanks. I would say the placement of my armor is the most important aspect of this mission. There are several elevated positions that I can position my armor that would have wide fields of fire on the enemy, but the gamble there is that the Syrians will have the same wide field of fire upon me, and they may be able to overcome my position with superior firepower and numbers. So it's a gamble that I'm willing to take. I'm going to split up my Panzer platoon into two sections. One section is going to provide overwatch on the left flank. The other section is going to provide overwatch on the right flank. If there is any advantage to this, it is that the enemy should be approaching from a pretty reliable direction, so I could, reliably anticipate that they're going to be engaging my armor to the front, and that's always a good thing. There'll be little possibility of my positions being flanked. On the left side, I put them in a partial hold down position with a low-rise rock wall for cover. On the right flank, I'm going to be putting them in a tree line. The tree line won't provide much hard cover, but it will provide some soft cover and concealment. And I should spot the enemy before they spot me. Now, there is a little issue with the right flank, and that is that there's a grouping of buildings that sort of obscures my vision from, I would say, 100 or 110 degrees. That may be an issue, but I'm expecting to kill the enemy before they get to a position where they can attack from dead space. Now, for the rest of the platoon, going to dismount the infantry after making sure that they've loaded up on Panzerfaust, and I'm going to deploy them in the urban centers in front of the MSR, phase line Blau. They're going to be in ambush positions. I'm not going to use them to engage the enemy until they get within 300 meters. Mainly because I don't want to draw the fire of any ATGMs or cannons. And while I'm deploying those infantry, I realize that there's a very detailed berm on my side of the road that will provide an excellent hold-down position for my martyrs. So the kill zone is going to be as follows. The long-range fires are going to be provided by the Leopards. If the enemy gets within, 500 or 600 meters, the martyrs will engage them from hold-down positions. And if they get even closer than that, then the infantry will engage them with small arms and with Panzerfaust. That's my defensive plan. The martyrs should be relatively safe in hold-down positions along the MSR. The only problem is that when a martyr spots a threat such as a tank, they tend to pop smoke in reverse. I don't think there's any way of actually stopping them from doing that, but it has been my experience that when they do that at inappropriate times, they can actually drive themselves into a firing arc and, get murdered. It is a good feature when you're maneuvering, because you don't want your martyrs to be, or your IFVs generally speaking, you don't want your IFVs to be trading shots with tanks, because the tanks will always win. However, in this particular situation, they have nowhere to run, and I'm going to put them in the best possible terrain, and then I just want them to engage. And there's no way for me to set that, and they're just going to reverse. So the idea here, this is called the hold down position. The idea here is that the hull of the vehicle is below defilade, but the turret of the vehicle is above defilade. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to fire on targets, but the targets will only be able to ineffectively engage you. And I'm going to be setting them up in very narrow kill zones. This way they can't get engaged from all sorts of angles from main battle tanks. And the trees are very helpful here for me, because I know that the trees will intercept many ATGMs and will generally conceal the martyrs, because the martyrs are, they're not in a very good position. Or I should say they're not in a very safe circumstance in this mission due to the expected armor threat. We see here the general, the general challenge of fighting enemy armor without javelins. Since I don't have anything like a javelin that can knock out these armor pieces from far distance, I'm going to be engaging them with guns, mainly, and maybe a few missiles. But it definitely is more dangerous than engaging with a javelin from 2,000 meters away or whatever. To be honest, this sort of reminds me of the Eastern Front during World War II. The Germans versus the Russians. It's very similar, actually. Similar terrain and similar circumstances. I'm outnumbered, but I have better equipment. And I am fighting Russian vehicles. Sort of a Kursk-esque scenario here. So, On the right flank, I'm going to be deploying my infantry forward in a series of storage buildings, grain refinement buildings. On both flanks, I'm going to be positioning the platoon leaders into overwatch positions in high-rise buildings. They're not going to be engaged in the fight. I want them to mainly spot and to provide intelligence to the line sections. The right flank is a little bit more troublesome because there isn't a really effective hold-down position. I mean, there are some little partial hold-down positions, but there's no full hold-down positions. And the kill zones are more difficult and more restrictive due to the trees. Trees are blocking more of the battlefield from this position. Unlike the left flank, where the trees actually serve a helpful purpose by acting as funnels for fire arcs. However, it's not the end of the world. The right flank isn't horrible, but it is slightly vulnerable. I'm hoping that the tanks on the left flank will be able to get a good overview of the entire right flank, and if the enemy's main effort is there, they'll be able to fire upon them and neutralize them. As soon as the mission starts, I'm going to be rushing this platoon across the open field. I'm going to put the snipers up in Overwatch. Oh, and by the way, I guess I should make note of this. All of my infantry sections are going to be in hide mode. And the reason for that is that I don't want them to fire on the enemy until they're close. I don't want them to fire until I give the order, essentially. Or if they're being directly threatened. Said in the briefing that the enemy would be attacking within 5 minutes. So I have 5 minutes or less to deploy. And although these buildings that I'm going to be occupying are actually in a forward area and they're beyond the extent of the MSR, they are more sound defensive positions. There is literally nowhere for my infantry to go on my side of the MSR. The only thing I can think of would be just hiding them behind some walls, but they wouldn't be able to effectively engage anyone from there. Where I'm going to be deploying them, they're going to be very effective, but only if the enemy comes within close range. I don't want to risk being engaged by a T-72 ATGM and losing an entire section. Okay, now that the defenses are set up, I'm just going to save my game. It took so long to set that up. And here we go. So right off the bat, I spotted BMP-1, probably a forward recce detachment of the main enemy force. I'm going to go ahead and splash that with howitzers. If the howitzers, if it moves and I lose line of sight and the howitzers aren't able to engage it or whatnot, then these tanks that are advancing on the left flank will definitely be able to interdict that BMP. And now we see in the foreground mortars landing, and what that is it's smoke rounds. So they're definitely creating a smoke screen, and that leads me to believe that they're going to be assaulting in this huge mechanized wave, which makes sense. Engaged here by the BMP. Tanks have not spotted it yet. Now I have spotted it. It's going to do some shoot and scoot. That's going to be the name of this game. You know, it's going to be firing and then scooting. This way I can sort of avoid any sort of interdiction by ATGMs or whatnot. And also, if I stay in one spot for too long, I'll probably be overwhelmed. So the leopards on the right are popping smoke. That tells me that missiles are being fired at them. So far, I haven't been able to spot them incoming, but they also may be popping smoke due to the mortars landing nearby. My infantry are nearly in position. I'm sort of surprised by the speed of the enemy attack. They're not supposed to be here for another 3 minutes or so. And looks like that. Now we spot a BMP on the right flank. Fired an ATGM at something. I don't know what he was firing at. Probably one of the tanks. And although I find that unlikely since I'm unable to engage him from there. So I'm going to go ahead and splash that BMP with mortar fire. We're only moments away from massive assault across my lines. My OPs are established, and the tanks are now in Overwatch. If I didn't have the Leopard tanks, then this mission would be truly difficult, and I'd probably take massive casualties. I'm very glad that they gave me the full-sized and full-strength tank platoon and not the one in which I lost the tank in the first, the second mission. So now we have this big smoke screen in front of my right flank Overwatch elements, and I'm just waiting for the 30 BMPs to rush out of the smoke cloud and engage my tanks at super close range. Of course, that's unlikely to happen because I have some pretty well-established OPs. And here we see, once again, the importance of opposing fire arcs for wingmen of tanks. It was best to operate armor and pairs, aka wingmen. Yes, the silence before the storm.
Feuer einstellen! Feuer einstellen! Feueranforderung kommen.
Now I've spotted a dismounted platoon HQ, Syrian platoon HQ. I'm gonna interdict every contact that I see with artillery, and it's always good to interdict the Syrian headquarters.
Feueranforderung
Once the
kommen.
officers are down, the rest of the force tends to crumble.
Feueranforderung empfangen. Ende.
Abgefeuert, kommen!
Now,
Abgefeuert.
we've
Ende.
spotted the first enemy armor, the T-72 modernized edition, and a wave of BMPs on the right
Feueranforderung
flank.
empfangen. Ende.
My armor spots them and immediately begins to engage.
Achtung, Aufschlag. Kommen. Aufschlag. Ende.
And
Wirkungsschießen. Kommen.
you probably didn't notice it, but what just happened there is a missile knocked out one of my mortars and
Abgefeuert. Kommen.
killed everyone. I'm going to be going through the mortar in a second, but I have no idea where the missile came from. It was probably just a lucky angle that I didn't anticipate.
Achtung, Aufschlag.
Not much I can do
kommen.
about that because I have nowhere to really hide the mortars on the right flank. So now what I notice is that there's a platoon of BMPs flanking the right side Overwatch elements. They were spotted by my armor, but my armor didn't have time to engage them.
Aufschlag. Ende.
So I'm going to move up my armor online at a nice, slow and steady speed with the intention of cutting them off and making sure that they don't flank my positions.
Kanne. Wirkungsschießen. Ende.
forces are fully engaged by the Syrians. There's a company plus armored vehicles rushing towards the right flank, and they're trying to move into that dead space there that I was originally sort of concerned about. Now we see here the martyr that was knocked out. Attempting to spot his flanking forces, but unable to from the left flank. Overwatch.
Feuerauftrag beendet. Ende.
So, as I'm unable to spot them with my Overwatch elements, I'm going to go ahead and saturate that area with howitzer fire. And now they attack on the left flank. Large wave of BMPs and T-72s. Meanwhile, you can hear the martyrs engaging, firing missiles at the enemy. Tanks here on the left are in danger of being flanked from the ravine directly to their left. And yes, now we see the behavior of martyrs withdrawing without being ordered to. Very bad, because they're going to skyline actually if they move out of that hull down position. Now I begin little bounds away from the enemy, followed by suppressive fires. It's difficult to call in a fire mission on the left flank since there's so many smokes that are being popped by the enemy. I can't really spot them for a fire mission. Nevertheless, I'm going to be calling in a general area fire mission. And you can see here, to the left of these tanks, I am in serious danger of being flanked. Those BMPs are rushing on the left, and they're actually forward slope of my position, so I'm not going to have an aim point on them. And although BMPs are relatively harmless to a Leopard tank at long range, they're definitely a threat at close range, and especially to the Leopard side armor. And that's because of their ATGMs. The ATGMs, they're inaccurate and they're crappy, but
Feueranforderungen kommen!
they are a danger at close range.
Feueranforderungen empfangen. Ende.
still too far out to engage with my infantry. Even though the Panzerfaust could probably reach that far, and I could probably score some hits, I don't want to draw the fire of those tanks onto my infantry. So I'm not going to be engaging with my infantry until I achieve a clear fire superiority, and their tanks are all being neutralized.
Feueranforderungen kommen! Angefeuert, kommen!
Abgefeuert, Ende.
So far, my plan for defense has been executed masterfully. The only place where I really failed is I didn't have very good flank security. But since I am dishing out so much firepower with these tanks, I'm sort of stunning the enemy attack, and the enemy attack is grinding to a halt. Destroyed a good deal of their armor, or at least immobilized it, or made it ineffectual.
Feueranforderungen kommen!
Keep having to move my stupid martyrs back into position.
Achtung, Aufschlag, kommen!
Lückenschießen, kommen!
The situation here on the left is still sort of precarious.
Ende.
They're still attacking on that forward slope in the ravine there. Accordingly, I'm going to detach one of my tanks and then move it up on the left to face them directly. Now we're getting into some really close range slugfest with these T-72s. Luckily, in every engagement I've been spotting them first and either knocking them out or disabling them before they can return effective fire. Howitzers are landing on those BMPs. Now I spot a ZIL truck filled with ATGM teams and a command element. This is sort of a prime target. It's definitely something that I want to prioritize, even though that it didn't represent a threat with the ATGM teams undeployed at the time. If I can kill them while they're still in the truck, that's great.
Feueranforderung gefangen, Ende.
And now we see that the infantry that were in those BMPs have dismounted and they're assaulting my Leopards at close range with RPG teams. Luckily, the Martyrs and the company command element that is in Overwatch suppressed those contacts. is also pushing up the center and is about to reach my infantry overwatch positions and ambush positions.
Angefeuert, kommen!
If they get any closer, I'm going to open fire on them. In fact, right now I'm going to go ahead and unhide my infantry teams so they can engage freely all the contacts that are around them. I also feel confident in doing so because I've achieved fire superiority. And the enemy attack is halting.
Achtung,
Even though that they are
Aufschlag.
doing some daring flanking maneuvers like over here.
Aufrunde, Ende! Wirkungsschießen, kommen!
Verstanden. Wirkungsschießen. Ende.
Feueranforderungen
Kommen.
in Franken. Ende.
Abgefeuert. Ende.
Ultimately, though, the Syrians are unable to win the day.
Achtung, Aufschlag, kommen!
Aufschlag. Ende.